Good day, sir. Good day, classmates. Today, me and my groupmates will talk about Marxist. Marxist. Marxist is a form of critique or discourse for interrogating all societies and their texts in terms of certain specific issues, including race, class, and attitudes shared within a given culture. Marxist also focuses on the presentation of class distinctions and class conflict in literature. So Marxist or Marxist literary approach is a loose term describing literary criticism based on socialist and dialectic theories. It also views literary works as reflections of the social institutions. Marxist focuses more on social and political elements than artistic and visual or aesthetic elements of a text. Marxists categorize into reality of society, economics, working classes, and politics. Marxist focuses on how literary works are product of the economic and ideological determinants specific to that era. In Marxist, critics examine the relationship of a literary product to the actual economic and social reality of its time and place. Marxist critics are also interested in how the lower or working classes are oppressed in everyday life and in literature.
So let's talk about Karl Marx. He was born in Trier, Germany, to a middle-class family. He is a German philosopher. He is widely referred to as philosopher, political economist, and a journalist. He was born on May 5, 1818 and died on March 14, 1883 due to illness. He is a German philosopher who rejected the tenets of Romanticism in favor of philosophy of dialectical materialism. He criticized the injustice inherent in the European class or capitalist system of economics operating in the 19th century. He believed that capitalism allowed the bourgeoisie to benefit at the expense of the workers. His most notable work is the Communist Manifesto that published on February 21, 1848. Originally, it is called the Manifesto of the Communist Party. Das Kapital analyzes the capitalist form of wealth production and its consequences for culture. Das Kapital is also known as Capital, a critique of political economy or sometimes simply capital.
Marx believed that the means of production, that is the basis of power in society, should be placed in the hands those who actually operate them. He wrote the economic and political revolutions around the world would eventually place power in the hands of the masses, the laborers. Marx noted a disparity in the economic and political power enjoyed by the factory owners and that allowed to the factory laborers. To read the work from Marxist perspective, one must understand that Marxism asserts that literature is a reflection of culture, and that culture can be influenced by literature. Marxists believe literature can investigate revolution.
Marx's views was a materialist, and materialist is to understand society, have to understand how it organized production. Marx believed that the fundamental truth about a particular society or period in history is how that society is organized to satisfy material needs. Forces of production refer to both the material worked on and the tools and techniques employed in the production of economic goods like land, technology, skills, knowledge, etc.
Social relations of production. Who controls the forces of production and how the forces of production will come into conflict with the relations of production. The relationship between the main groups engaged in the production of goods for sale workers and those who supervise them on behalf of capitalist owners.
So there is four main areas of study in Marxist theory, which is the economic power, materialism versus spirituality, class conflict, and the art, literature, and ideology. So the first one is the economic power. Economic power, a society is shaped by its forces of production. and those who own the means of production dictate what type of society it is. And there are two main classes of society, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Bourgeoisie, who control the means of production and wealth, while the proletariat, who operate the means of production and are controlled by the bourgeoisie. Since the bourgeoisie own the means of production and therefore control the money, they can manipulate politics, government, education, art, and the media. Next is the materialism versus spirituality. Regardless of what some might claim, social values reflect material goals, not abstract ideals. The material world is the only non-subjective element in a society. Money and material possessions are the same by every measure within a society, whereas spirituality is completely subjective. And in materialism versus spirituality, the quality of a person's life is not destroyed by spiritual failure but by material failure.
Class conflict. The bourgeoisie present their political, economic, and social structures as the only reasonable ones. The proletariat, indoctrinated from birth to have pride in their station, are prevented from wanting to overthrow their oppressors. Ironically, the smaller and actually less powerful group. The only real social division is class. Division of race, ethnicity, gender, and religion are artificial, devised by the bourgeoisie to distract the proletariat from realizing their unity and rebelling against their oppressor. So Marx called on the proletariat to reject the social structure of the bourgeoisie, the rules that would keep them subservient forever and form their own values. Such a course would be the only way to escape the oppression, for the proletariat could never defeat the bourgeoisie on its own terms. For the workers to win, they must establish new terms. Art, literature, and ideologies. Art and literature are among the vehicles by which the bourgeoisie impose their value system on the proletariat. The arts can make the current system seem attractive and logical, thus lulling the workers into an acceptance of it. Works of art and literature are enjoyable, so the audience is unaware of being manipulated. The bourgeoisie control most artistic output because, whether through patronage or sponsorship, they are the entity that funds the art and entertainment. Since the bourgeoisie materially support the writers and the painters, owning the means of production as well as serving as primary consumers, the artist must be careful not to offend bourgeoisie values. Anything offensive or challenging to the bourgeoisie will simply not be published or sold.
In Marxist theory, there is economic base and superstructure. The difference between economic base and superstructure is economic base is the forces and relations of production, while the superstructure is the legal and political structures of society.
The economic base and superstructure. The economic base influences the superstructure. Economic power is the basis of all other types of power. The bourgeoisie, therefore, controls society's institutions to help maintain the status quo.
Examples of Marxist theory are the Adventure of Huckleberry Finn and the Hunger Games are both examples of literary works that lend themselves to Marxist. Marxist example would include also the Charles Bird's work on the American Revolution and the self-interest of the moneyed class in designing the Constitution. Modern-day examples of Marxist theory are the large media, telephone, and oil conglomerate are some of the current examples by Marxists.